Bonnie Gray, it is such a pleasure to have you here on See Here Love. Welcome and welcome to Canada.
I am so excited. I love being able to talk to my Canadian sisters across the way
Yes.
right here, our neighbors.
No, I am so glad you're here. And I'm so glad because I'm a storyteller. I love telling stories, I love listening to stories. And what I'm really looking forward to is hearing your incredible story. There's so many layers. There's so many places we could go, and we don't have 5 hours, Bonnie. But I'm just so fascinated about your story. So I think first of all, I want to just for our viewers and listeners to get to know you, Bonnie, like who you are, bit of your background before we kind of get into the story with Sweet Like Jasmine, and then I want to talk about some really three things that kind of popped out at me, which I think is fascinating in your own story about perfectionism, toxic relationships, and emotional exhaustion. And I say those because those are things that I know a lot of women deal with, and men, and even myself. So why don't we first get to know you as a new sister and a new girlfriend, and hear about you, who you are.
Okay, well, I love stories too. In fact, stories is really became my safe place. I grew up in a home that was very toxic. There was a lot of verbal and emotional abuse, and I didn't think that that was like abnormal, meaning, that's when you grow up, that's all you know, right? So I learned from very young age, it's better to be quiet unless I had something to contribute that would help anybody. It didn't matter how I felt or what I thought about anything. I learned very early, and I know we're gonna get into those stories, but the reason why I started with that is because I love stories so much. They were my safe place where I felt like I was actually on planet Earth. Whenever I felt I could open a book, my books were my first friends. I was born in San Francisco Chinatown. My mother was a mail order bride from Hong Kong, and she was 18 when she had me. She was 17 when she immigrated here to meet my father. My father was a busboy in a noodle shop in San Francisco Chinatown in Golden Gate restaurant. And those who are kind of familiar with the Asian American history experience here in California, that's where like the gangs basically shot up. That's the kind of history that I was born into. So a lot of people say like, hey, what if your story was a blank page? What would you want to be? Like, I don't connect with that, Melinda, because I felt like I was born into a story, a script that was already written for me. And so I kind of, hid that part of my story. And it's so interesting that many of us do that, right? We kind of decide, well, we're our own editor. Okay, what is that we're going to show to others? And what is that we're just going to keep to ourselves? And there's nothing wrong with that. I thought that's pretty normal. When I stepped out the doorway to go to school, I need to figure out, hey, what do people talk about? Let me figure out, what do people like to talk about so I can participate. But when I stepped through the doorway back at home, it was like I was in another world. And so that's kind of that split world where there wasn't a place where both parts of myself could be together. At home, I was home Bonnie. Then went to school, I was positive, cheerful Bonnie. And it seemed like there wasn't one place that I was both persons. So, this book, Sweet Like Jasmine, Finding Identity in a Culture of Loneliness. I never felt I was lonely, Melinda. I felt loneliness was like maybe having difficulty making friends or not having a social circle. But I learned later on, we'll get into the story, that loneliness is really an internal way we feel about ourselves. There's parts of us that we kind of cut out, and there is loneliness because we're hiding our hearts, we're hiding our stories. There isn't a place where we can share our true voice, and it manifests itself in ways that I wouldn't expect. In fact, I tell you, Melinda, part of my growing up experience in faith, I did meet Jesus at a very young age, right when my parents split, when I was 7. And it's so interesting. A lot of people that I meet, I don't know what it is about marriages. At the 7th year or 8th year, a lot of people say, oh, my parents also divorced when I was 7 or 8 or 9. Something about that period of marriage is...
I have heard that. I have actually heard that. And I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary, and we were talking about that. Like, 7 is coming up. We're going to be strong. Thank you. But we're going to be strong through this and, and get through that. But yeah, I have heard that about that 7 years, like the 7-year itch or 7 year something that challenges marriages and relationships.
Yeah. So it was at that point that my father left, and it was so jolting. And every woman's going to have the experience. Maybe it's not your father. Maybe it was, an ex-boyfriend. It could be a coworker. Maybe you're trying to work something out and they just leave. It could be a girlfriend that stabbed you in the back that you didn't expect. I don't know what that moment is for you, but we're never prepared, right? We're never prepared for those moments. And I didn't realize later that actually it's called trauma. I would have never used that word. Okay, so I woke up one morning, rubbed the sleep off my eyes, and I noticed that my dad's suitcases are packed next to the door. I'm like, what is going on? And my parents are arguing and fighting, and it's right at that screen door. Okay, they're fighting and arguing, and then the last memory I have of my father is he's driving off in his Nova. This is back in the 70s, the olive green Nova with the peeling paint on the rooftop, squealing tires out of the driveway. And I'm like, where is Dad going? I was crying. And my mother, she said, get over here. She's pulling out our photo album, family photo albums, yanking the photos out, and she's cutting up the photos right in the middle of his faces. It's like, shredded, weeds under a lawnmower. Just the whole living room floor was covered. And she's like, get those pictures out of your dad, and I want you to cut them up. She shoved a pair of scissors in my hands, and I'm literally cutting up photos of my father. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to somehow save one photo. I was kind of trying to be sneaky and hide it. My mom caught me, and she said, what are you doing? I said, look, I'm not in this photo. You're not in the photo. Can I just keep one? She literally dragged me over to the phone, and she's like, you love your dad so much, you go pack your bags and let's get you there now. I'm going to call him now. Right then and there, Melinda, I stopped crying. Right then and there,
Really?
I did not ask any questions. I said, no, Mom, I'm okay. No, I don't want to go. And we do that, don't we? When we face rejection, or when we face those moments where we realize we're kind of reading a person's body language or their facial reaction, we're like, okay, what? Never mind. I don't need to say this, or I don't need to feel this, or I don't need to ask questions. It's people that get gaslighted would understand this. Suddenly you're kind of confused, like, oh yeah, what was I thinking anyways? Oh yeah, I don't need that, or I don't even know what I was thinking, never mind, So that part of that rejection, putting our hearts to the side, okay, I learned that very early on, and I learned kind of that family code of silence, keeping the peace at all costs. And that was a moment where I remember I never saw my father again, never came back. I would check my mailbox every time it was my birthday, kind of secretly hoping, hey, maybe this toxic mom I have, maybe she's the one that's like hiding all these cards. I would try to come back from school, but there was never a card. I thought, okay, maybe when I turn 18, when I graduate from high school, maybe there'll be a man as the crowds disperse, after we get our diploma, he'll come over to me, like one of those movies. He'll come over to me saying, I'm your father, Bonnie. I waited till you're 18 so your mom can't stop me from seeing you. Well, nobody came. Nobody emerged, Melinda. So right then and there, I remember I was 18. And I said, okay, that's so childish. Forget it. My life is not a Hallmark movie. Just move on. You've never had him in your life. You don't need him now. And so I just abandoned that part of my life. And, as Christians, I really held on and lavished that word. I'm a new creation. But I took it in a way that meant I'm going to erase my past. I just want everything new.
Wow. Whoa, that's something to land on, Bonnie, where we've taken that verse and said, new creation, wow, don't look at the past, I don't need to worry about it, need to deal with it, it's gone, and now I'm just going to head on to my future. And even I know that when you don't deal with the past, it will come and bite you big time and impact you in the future, in your future relationships, in the way you work, in the way you see yourself, in the way you see God. And I can imagine that's what happened to you. Obviously, within your story, you realize that when you're not dealing with, I mean, and so much, Bonnie, like this two-person young girl, Bonnie at school, Bonnie at home, the trauma of your parents divorcing and leaving, and watching visually your mom cut the picture up of your dad, right? Your dad being a completely absent father and not connecting with you. And now you're a woman. So you've gone through this sort of like in your childhood, now you're a woman and you're like, okay, you know what? Past is past. Let's go.
Yes. And I think we do that.
Wow. Bonnie, wow.
Yeah, I think we do that, and there's nothing shameful about it but in God's grace, He knows we need to survive. He knows to get through the hard times, we have to make vows, that strong part of us that overcomes. But here's the beauty. God's saying, what worked for us in one season isn't what I intend for you for a lifetime. We were not created to carry the burden, to walk alone, and to constantly be strong. And that God wants us to let go of one of those vows we made earlier in our lives. And one of those vows is, I need to keep the peace no matter what. That's one of the vows I made. And God's saying, you need to let go. Now, I did not hear this in a way that was just, I'm sitting here having a cup of coffee and tea, and God just said, you need to let go of your vows. In fact, it came at a time when I started having panic attacks. I started experiencing anxiety, and it's so interesting, Melinda, because I went on to graduate from UCLA. It's kind of what I thought was a typical immigrant overcomer experience, put myself through school. Okay, I finally made it into the normal people real world. Meaning, that's why I said the new creation, I really loved it. Okay, I'm gonna be part of the normal, happy, unbroken people. And this baggage I have, let's just hey, it's under the cross, let's forget about it. By the way,
let's get about it.
When Apostle Paul said, forgetting what's behind us to move towards the goal of Christ, I realized when I looked closer, what Paul was telling us he was forgetting wasn't his past. It was his identity as a Pharisee. It was his identity of living life by following the rules and looking good.
Good.
So faith is not an eraser for the past. In fact, it takes greater faith to look back at those broken pieces, to take them out and to say, God, this is painful. I don't understand it. I'm upset. Why did this have to happen to me? That just takes faith. That takes faith that God invites us, He welcomes us. Now this sounds very beautiful at this time because I'm on the other side of it, but when it was happening, I was having panic attacks, and it was during a time where I already grew up. I kind of started living this cookie cutter life of what I thought was the mountaintop experience of being a believer. Okay, I found a husband, loving husband. I just had 2 kids, and I was like, phew, I just breathed a sigh of relief. Like, I actually made it. Oh my gosh. Now I can build a new generation, a legacy of faith, And it was in that moment I started having panic attacks. I'd be sleeping, not worried at all. I got married later in life, Melinda, in my 30s. And so I already had a career for 15 years in high tech. And I had the opportunity to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I wasn't worried about any particular thing. And I started choking. I would wake up jolted, choking.
Oh.
My throat started narrowing, and my heart would start palpitating. I'm just sleeping, peacefully, something, cannot breathe. And I was like, gosh, that's really scary. I mean, I was hoping actually that I had some kind of illness or disease, because to me, that was not as scary as what the doctor told me. The doctor said, Bonnie, your tests are normal. Oh my gosh, that was scary for me, because that meant, oh no, do I have to see a therapist? That to me was like the kiss of quote unquote death, because I grew up in a Christian culture that told me all I need is Jesus, meaning pray more, praise more, sing more, more Bible verses.
Read the Bible more. Yeah, read the Bible more, memorize scripture. Yeah,
Exactly.
got it.
And so like
Yeah.
I was like, oh no, my faith is flawed. And I was like a Bible teacher at my church. I was training others to be Bible teachers, you know, and I was a leader by that time. I'm in my 30s, you know. And I'm just like, I can't tell anybody. So I secretly went to talk to the head honcho. He was overseeing 100 different therapists at a Christian counseling center, and I just kind of asked him, I go, hey, who can I see, you know, to get this fixed? And he's like, within a minute, Melinda, within a minute, he said, he's like, this is a classic case of PTSD. I was like, PTSD? I've never been a soldier. I've never seen violence.
Oh my goodness, Bonnie, that's exactly when I first heard it. I always thought PTSD was only from being in war and a soldier. And in my own life, you know, my therapist, Christian therapist, actually said I was dealing with PTSD, and I'd never heard that from the things that had happened in my past, from the things that were done to me in the past. And I had no idea. That's why I was in a depression. That's why I had a major panic attack on the side of a road one day. No clue. And then when they said that is trauma, that is, you know, PTSD, it was like, oh my goodness, I didn't know that that was called trauma. I thought that was just called pain or bad things happening to me. I didn't know the word was trauma, what I experienced. This is good. Go ahead. Keep going. This is really good.
No, but thank you so much. I love the way you articulate that. You know, that's why we need different voices, because even as you're speaking, you're giving language to my experience. And then I'm a little more whole, feeling like I am known. And that's really the point of Sweet Like Jasmine. This is not just a memoir about Bonnie. It's saying, hey, what are the stories that we hide as women and men, because we want, and it's normal, there's nothing shameful, we want to belong, we want to be accepted, but
yes,
so okay, yeah, so the therapist,
so
PTSD,
like, so you're not
so
PTSD,
I was like, wait, but I'm not a soldier. And he said, well, did you know that verbal abuse and emotional abuse has the same impact as physical abuse? And I was like, no.
Wow.
What?
Yeah.
It's the same response to our bodies. And I said, wait. I said, the second question I asked was, but I'm good now. I'm happy. I'm not worried about anything. I'm in a loving relationship. I've been through worse times in my life. As you know, you've read the book. I was like, why is it happening now? And oh my gosh, this changed my life. This changed my faith walk and propelled me into trying to go back to find my father. Okay, which is what happened. This book describes. But he said to me, when does a soldier get panic attacks? He doesn't have panic attacks when he's on the battlefield, when he's being strong, helping others, totally great at problem solving, being positive, and surviving and overcoming. When does a soldier have panic attacks?
And so he asked you that question.
Yeah,
so you're asking me. He has panic attacks when he's not on the field, probably on his cot at night. I don't know, like when he's not doing the
exactly
service.
When he comes home, when he's safe. It's when he's safe that his body, his nervous system, the way God made our nervous system to protect us. It's actually a positive thing. God made it so that it protects us in the moment, because when the moment that we're being hurt or wounded or in harm's way, and again, emotionally or verbally, it protects us so that we can deal with the situation. It's just natural. But just as natural when we're safe, that's when it comes out. Our body can then express finally what we could not at the time. And so he said, it's the opposite. He said, it's not that your faith is flawed or that you're weak. It's because you've been strong. It's because you've trusted God. It's because your faith has gotten you through hard times. And now it's a different way of exercising your faith. Now you're going to use your faith to heal. Yeah. And so it suddenly took away the shame. I'm like, oh, it's because I did good. It's because I did use my faith. And now the way God's created me and us, we're not to indefinitely hold on to that. Our nervous system, when we're safe and relaxed, and so it makes sense to me now. I was like, why is it happening now when I'm a mom? Okay, finally, whew, that exhale. We're positive, we're dreaming, we want to create new things, beautiful things. That means we're safe. And that's when a lot of, like say moms, or it could be any stage in life, before a wedding or maybe a new ministry, a new job, some kind of positive, safe change in life, that's actually when things like depression or anxiety might surface, because things early in our lives that we could not experience before, now our body is telling us, hey, we need to heal, we need to nurture.